Hey folks, Marco here. Welcome to Computer Lab for topic 1. So what is on our agenda for today? Despite the title Foundations, I want this practical to be of value not only to newcomers but also to experienced AI wizards out there. However, if you are new to this, let me share with you a couple of things that you should expect. First and foremost, I would argue that programs you're about to use are unlike any you have used before. Automatic 1111 and Comfy UI are quite different from most programs you would have encountered so far, both in terms of installation process and their usage. For example, they are different from Photoshop, they are different from Illustrator, from any of the Microsoft Office programs, and so on. And if you think I'm about to say, because of open source, you're wrong. Believe me, I'm not saying this lightly. I'm sure many of you have also used Blender, GIMP, Inkscape, and many other open source programs, and yet I still maintain that these two are different. So what sets Automatic 1111 and Comfy UI apart from all these other programs? The answer? These other programs are written in languages like C and C++, which are compiled into binary executables before distribution. As such, this makes them compiled software. Because their binaries include all necessary components, the installation process is much simpler. Everything you need to run the application is already there, bundled with the installer. On the other hand, Automatic 1111 and Comfy UI are primarily written in Python programming language with JavaScript front-end. Python is interpreted language, as is JavaScript for that matter, which means that the code is not compiled but interpreted at runtime. These are all big words, but what does this mean for you? Well, unlike compiled software you may be used to, you will find that the installation process is more complex and requires more steps. Heavy dependence on external libraries means that you need to manage your Python environment carefully and make sure that things remain compatible. And therein lies the problem. Most people, myself included, began our journey by learning how to install Stable Diffusion first. From that point on, through trial and error, we learn how Python environments and dependencies work. Well, this course will flip this model other way around. Instead of showing you how to install Stable Diffusion right at the beginning, you will learn how to manage your Python environments first, and your patience will be rewarded by the ability to install not only any of the Stable Diffusion user interfaces, but also anything else you might encounter. Let me be more specific. Learning outcome for today is this. Let's use this rectangle as visual representation of my Windows computer, and this inner rectangle to represent my Windows user account. By the end of today, you will be able to install any Python repository regardless of the required Python version or its dependencies. And lastly, before I wrap up this intro, let me quickly share my screen with you so you know exactly what I mean, and so you can then make a decision if this video is something you want to watch further or not. See how these different programs require different version of Python? With that in mind, let's switch to other screen. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to right-click and create a new folder. I'm going to call this demo folder. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on that folder and open it in Visual Studio Code. And I am going to immediately save this as a workspace. Now, if I open Terminal and if I check Python version to see if I have Python installed and which version, it says Python not found. However, what I can now do is click here and I can pick and choose which version of Python I want. This folder is supposed to be where Automatic 1111 is going to be. I can just set that Python as my default. So now, if I open the terminal, it looks the same, right? But if I type Python version, I get Python 3.10.6 because that's the one I picked. Yeah, I can also pick Python 3.11 if I want to. So then I'm just gonna reopen the terminal, enter that same command, and you can see now it's Python 3.11.9. So what this means is I can, for instance, if I want to run automatic 1111 from within my recent projects, I can click here and it'll open up. This is that familiar web UI user batch file that you're familiar with. So if I run this, automatic 1111 will launch as usual. If I want to launch Comfy UI, I will just go open Comfy UI folder, which is this one here. And then, because main.py is the entry point for it, so run the file in terminal, same story as before, and you will see that it's a different correct version of Python. And it launches Comfy UI. And lastly, if I want to run Koya scripts, but yeah, this brings me back here. And now I just go to the GUI graphical user interface batch file that I run, and it runs as normally would. And that brings you to this interface here. And lastly, if you're wondering whether you need terminals or VS Code each time you want to run any of these programs, the short answer is no. I will show you how to make desktop shortcuts which will run each of these programs using the version of Python you specify. Quick overview of UIs for those not familiar. Automatic 1111 is the oldest UI. This is how I got into Stable Diffusion. As the oldest UI, it also has the largest user base. If you are a complete beginner and have at least 8 gigabytes of VRAM, I recommend starting here. If you have 8 gigabytes of VRAM or less, you can give Comfy UI a try. Although Comfy is known for having steeper learning curve, one of its strengths lies in memory management. Regardless of which UI you choose, both Automatic 1111 and Comfy UI have large and active communities and vast ecosystem of tools that extend their functionalities. In Automatic 1111, these are called extensions, while in Comfy they are called custom nodes. Some tools initially begin as a node before someone turns them into Automatic 1111 extension. Others, like Tiled Diffusion, began as extension first before algorithm got adapted into a node. Point is, we learn from each other, we share, we collaborate, and contribute in our own way. So if you stumble upon a heated discussion online, don't think much of it. It's kind of like Android versus iPhone banter, or PlayStation versus Xbox. Although, given the, quote, success Microsoft's Xbox has had in Japan, I wouldn't be surprised if my Japanese viewers are wondering, what the bloody hell is Xbox? Anyway, so feel free to choose whichever UI you prefer. And with that said, let's start with the primary focus of today's practical. Many of you are already familiar with my teaching style. The why is just as important as how. It is critical that you have a clear idea what is going on if you follow along. Don't just blindly type commands into the terminal just because some dude on YouTube who calls himself professor said so. Let this rectangle represent my computer, my system drive. Inner rectangles are my user accounts, for example, Professor Lich and Marco. Official instructions for both user interfaces follow the same pattern. You install Git, you install Python, download the repository, and run some kind of script that will install all the dependencies. So, for example, to install Automatic 1111 by following the official instructions, we are expected to download Python 3.10.6, and once it's installed, script from WebUI repo will fetch all the required dependencies. However, I'm also teaching Comfy UI, so after I have downloaded Python 3.10.6 and installed it, I would then need to install Python 3.11.9 and Comfy UI. And it's not just me, although it may not be at the forefront of your mind right now, but you might decide to train AI to generate images of you. Perhaps you want to turn yourself into a cartoon character, for example. To install Koya GUI, you and I would need Python 3.10.11, and so on. You get the idea. Given that you shouldn't really have more than one version of Python installed on a single user account, how do we proceed? Well, one solution would be to create 3 new Windows accounts and then install Python for each. I haven't tried this, but as long as you tick the box install only for me during each installation, this should work in theory. However, as we have seen, there is a much better way. So I'm not going to follow these instructions down to the letter. Instead of installing Python, I will install something called Anaconda. Among many things it does, Anaconda comes with CLI tool Conda, which can be used for managing Python versions and packages. I will create 3 Conda environments, Py 3.10, Py 3.11, and Koya. Once I've done that, I can install the version of Python I need in each one. I don't need to worry about conflicts because Conda environments are isolated. When launching command prompt as admin, there is no such thing as Python. Likewise, command prompt launched without elevated privileges tells us the same thing. However, once you install Anaconda, you gain access to Anaconda prompt from Start menu. We can use that to set up and access our environments. I use activate command to go inside different environments. This is inside Py 3.10. See how there is Py 3.10 in brackets? That tells you which environment you're in. So I'm inside Py 3.10. I have checked that my Python version is correct. Then use activate command and switch. Now I'm inside Py 3.11. I checked that my Python version is correct. Then use activate command and switch. And now I'm inside, I activate Koya. I check that my Python version is correct. And as you can see, in each environment, I have the correct version of Python. And that is essentially it. Now that you have gained conceptual understanding of what is going on, I am certain that you don't need to watch me share my screen with you each step of the way. Although this channel would benefit from views and likes, all my videos are designed to be as short and concise as possible. To that end, this course has a companion in form of a GitHub repository. There you can find all the commands I used for each environment, download the slides I used in this video, as well as assignment solutions. I have no interest in maximizing your time on YouTube. After watching it once, you shouldn't ever need to watch this video again. Or worse, having to rewind the video back and forth, trying to find that one command you vaguely remember me mentioning before. And speaking of assignments, you are to create a separate environment for ComfyUI, specifically for 3D Nodes Pack. Automatic 1111 users, you don't need to actually use any of the nodes, you just need to make the thing work. If you successfully installed all 3 repos from before, believe me when I say, this assignment is the ultimate challenge of your mastery of Python environments. Solution will be posted on GitHub. As always, thank you for listening and class dismissed.
Yo, we diving deep in the code, no sleeper. Anaconda's the tool making data science cheaper. With Python and R, it's the main feature. Open source hero, the knowledge seeker. Packages on deck, over 1500 NumPy pandas. Get your data crunched and bunted. Machine learning, AI stats so grounded. With Anaconda, your project's astounded. Anaconda, slicing data like a blade. In the science game, it's the top grade. Conda managed packages, no delay. In the code jungle, it's the ace of spade. Creating violence, isolation's key. Different projects, in harmony see. Jupiter, Spider, tool so free. Anaconda Navigator, GUI easy peasy. Cross-platform, Windows to Mac, Linux too, it's on the go boss. Community strong with the open source gloss. Anaconda's the king, no need to floss. Anaconda, slicing data like a blade. In the science game, it's the top grade. Conda managed packages, no delay. In the code jungle, it's the ace of spade. Performance high, Intel MKO speed in the data race. It's the speed we need, big data tools like Spark and Hadoop. With Anaconda, you're in the loop. From machine learning to AI creation, Anaconda's there, no hesitation. Visualization, type and plot insight. Data storytelling, shining bright, enterprise ready. secure and scale. Collaborate and share projects never derailed. Training models deploy with ease. Anaconda's the breeze in the tech seas. Anaconda, slicing data like a blade. In the science game, it's the top grade. Conda managed packages, no delay. In the code jungle, it's the ace of spade. Education's friend, in classrooms galore. Teachers and students always asking for more. SciPy, Matplot, live inside, can learn. Anaconda's the flame, watch the passion burn. Docs and tutorials, community strong. With Anaconda you can't go wrong. Open source power, innovation song. In the data game, Anaconda's where you belong. Anaconda, slicing data like a blade. In the science game, it's the top grade. Conda, managed packages, no delay. In the code jungle, it's the ace of spade. So here's to Anaconda, the data king. With Python and R, hear the knowledge sing. From the lab to production, making it swing. In the world of data, it's the one true thing. So here's to Anaconda, the data king. With Python and R, hear the knowledge sing. From the lab to production, making it swing. In the world of data, it's the one true thing.